Hi everyone. Friday's questions all come from Josh Barrett, one of 750 Motor Club's team of commentators. I want to thank Josh not just for sticking with this format and for giving me so much material to work with today, but also for being such a brilliant presence in the paddock at race meetings. Josh gets all of his information to commentate expertly by going around and talking to drivers and understanding as much as possible about them, and it's just always feels like a privilege to get time to spend with him and then to hear or be told about by the team afterwards. Everything that he's soaked up being put to use during races is a fantastic skill. Thank you. So, how did you find doing 1 hour stints in the BMW for the first time? This last season in Club Enduro, we'll go from doing normally 20 to 25 minutes as half of a road sports race into 1 hour, or we plan to do even more at Croft. I find that the time in the car is almost quite arbitrary. The amount of time you're there depends very much on how well you can settle into a groove and how busy you are. If you're racing hard against people, if you're in heavy traffic, or if you're having to manage a lot of cars around you often, it can feel like every lap is really draining. If you get a little bit of space and if you can settle in quite nicely, even if there are cars within shot, then it can pass a lot quicker, and you can find suddenly that you've ticked away 4 or 5 laps without noticing. It does depend. Managing temperature is a serious thing over an hour stint, particularly if you're having the second stint. You're handed a car that's already hot, and then you're in it, working hard with exhaust trying to burn you through the floor for such a long period. That does become a challenge, particularly on high summer days. But yeah, the main thing that I find is trying to keep in touch with the car and how it feels. Trying to make sure that the tyre temperatures are okay, trying to make sure the brakes don't seem to be getting too hot, keeping an eye on temperatures, but also the feel of it from a durability point of view. Does it still feel as tight? Is it still pulling the same speed down the straights? That's what I find takes up the most of my mind, and obviously I know over an hour stint, it starts to dominate actually, and I find myself monitoring the car almost as much as I'm focusing on racing it. So yeah, quite taxing in that sense. And leads on to the next question of, do you have appetite for longer races in Club Enduro, and do you think the cars could take it? Do I have appetite? Personally, no, which is entirely on the grounds of cost, but not in the direction you might think. Of course, if we run the cars longer, then we're going to use more fuel and brake and tyre and so on. But once you start doing more than one refuelling stop, or we run races that are 2 stops for 3 hours. If you go any further than that, you start to get into the point where you might need to change tyres, where you need to have a serious amount of fuel, where you need to start carrying a lot of spares, because you could start carrying out major repairs during the race, and if you lose 2 or 3 laps, 10 minutes say, you could still be in contention over a long race once you get past 2 or 3 hours into 6 hours or 12-hour races. And that means the amount of equipment and the amount of people you need to race the car effectively skyrockets. Even just making sure you have fuel churns full, that's a person who's having to not be in the garage and having to go over to the fuel station. At some circuits there isn't even on-site fuel. It becomes a full-time person just to make sure there's always fuel available. Maybe you have to change tyres during the race, so you need 2 sets of race wheels, 2 sets of race tyres. You need a serious number of people and impact guns and jacks and everything to be able to effect a tyre change quickly. You need to practice all of this. It becomes a huge undertaking once you get into full-blown endurance racing like that. I actually think the cars could take it. What I found with my car is that, despite what I said about always trying to keep in touch with it, that's mostly my own mechanical sympathy and my own nervousness about the car, the age of the car, and the fact that I have to drive it home afterwards. Generally, once you're up to an hour or so it's running, everything's quite well stabilised, and provided you have enough brake pad in it and enough tyre life, the car, if you're not abusing it, should be able to continue quite indefinitely like that. I think the cars could do it, but the teams and the level of preparation we need would be on an entirely different level, and certainly at this stage I don't think I could support it. I think that championship is pitched at about the right level so that a clubman sized team can aspire into it, and you can run races with a very limited number of people. I've seen it done with only the drivers, with the driver who's getting in the car, refueling, and then going like that. It can be done that way. If you go to a longer race, I think that opportunity falls away, and it'll become a much bigger budget series. Do you think a club level production 24-hour race could work again, a la the Willhire in the 80s and early 90s? Yes. In short, I think it could. I think that despite what I've said about it requiring a much bigger team, I think a series of long endurance races at club level would be difficult to do. But an annual 24-hour, yes, I think so. I think there's appetite for that, and I think it's growing. I think the success of the C1 endurance series and of the Enduro KA that MSV are running is showing that actually endurance racing is being seen as a really good budget way of getting a lot of seat time, and also of having a great weekend with a group of friends. You know, trying to beat a 24-hour race, because that is what you're doing. You're trying to beat the time that the car has to run for, as much as other competitors, is a different experience, and you could definitely draw people together for that kind of event. Yes, I think so. But I think you'd have to have it very, very tightly regulated, and I think you'd need to have the performance of the cars limited quite far. Not only for a safety and practicality point of view, because when you have amateur drivers and you could have novice club racers out there, having a big difference in performance between cars will be risky, and simply just to keep costs controllable, I think you'd need to have quite tight regs. But it can be done with cars quicker than the C1s and the KAs. Yes, I do think there's scope out there for that. I'd sign up. I think it'd be brilliant. I don't know how I find space in the garage for all the wheels I'd need, but yeah, I'd love to do that. I've got more on the list for tomorrow. Thanks, Josh. Thanks, everyone. Keep them coming if you have any more questions.